Hello and welcome to Fire Headlines, where we cover the hottest topics in fire service news. I'm your host, Samantha Didion, and today I am joined by the panel, Chief Bob Horton and Chief Jeff Buchanan. It's been a couple weeks since the three of us were on together, so it's great to see you both again. Our topic today is modular fire stations. An article recently shared in the Daily Dispatch highlights a fire station in Southern California that has been designed and constructed as a prefab modular build, enabling faster completion and future reconfiguration. A few other things I thought were really interesting about this development is that the build is over 4,600 square feet and the construction timeline was only 6 months. The article lists a bunch of other benefits of this build, but Bob, what are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you, Samantha. Thanks for that lead in. Jeff, good to be back here. Samantha, good to be back with you all. Some great episodes while I was away. So congratulations on that. Listen, station design is a really, I think it's a fascinating topic. I think it's a great conversation. It, much like a lot of the fire service culture items we've talked about on the show, how the station is designed is another area that we have, sometimes some collision between tradition and innovation. I can think of a couple of different examples when we were building fire stations, either in the time I was in Las Vegas or what we were doing. We built a fire station when we were in Oregon in our department. Samantha, you remember that? And what was interesting was we were in a modular station as a temporary fire station, really like a double-sized manufactured home with an apparatus bay that was masonry construction. And that functioned for the fire district for a number of years. In fact, it's still being used on loan to another fire agency. In fact, actually, they maybe just wrapped up recently with utilizing that. But the reason I bring that up is I'd never been exposed to this idea of anything other than, one of these monstrosity Taj Mahal fire stations that we grew up around, and then had that experience when moved to Oregon. And it sure got me thinking about what other ways can we house resources across our community in a way that may be not only safe for today's standards, but efficient in the future. And here comes this article with work that the Orange County Fire Authority is doing in Rancho Mission Viejo, California. And it's this modular design you just spoke about. And I was really intrigued by this as well. I think you captured what are some of the key things from like an administrator standpoint, which is it functional? Will it work? Is it safe for our firefighters? And, cost in time of construction. And this design seems to have accomplished a lot of those elements that an administrator would think about. On the other hand, there's the operators that are inside the structure. And the article doesn't get to, what does that look like in terms of how the firefighters are believe or feel like, does this feel like a fire station that they're used to? But by everything I can read about it, it sure checks, all of those boxes, accomplishes the things you would want in a fire station. And 6 months to construction in today's day and age on really anything is quite amazing. A funny story, I had interfaced with the superintendent of the construction project who built Fire Station 5 in Las Vegas. And I'll spare a lot of the details about it, that what he had shared with me. But that was about a 2-year construction of that fire station. That is the same time frame that the Bellagio was being constructed. And the Bellagio was built somewhere in this 6 to 8 months, like some exorbitant. I don't remember exactly how long it took, but it was a rapid construction of a mega resort hotel and casino. There's a lot of economic reasons they do that versus how the financing for the project, the fire station went. My whole point of bringing that up is fire stations take a long time. They cost a ton of money and they're limiting because they're designed for 50-year use. So, we've talked a lot about what's the future of the fire service going to look like. And we're trying to project out what the next 10 years looks like, let alone, 50. And are we constructing fire stations that are going to meet the needs of the community? What I'm seeing here is innovation and a attempt to move past kind of a fixed model into something that's flexible for the future. I applaud him for this.
Bob, Samantha, great to see you. I love this topic. I know I feel like I say that a lot, but it's true. I'm going to start with a couple of cliches that I think are appropriate here, and that's if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. And what got us here isn't going to get us there. Feeding into Bob's thoughts on innovation, this is exactly that. This is an innovation. And although it may be new to California, innovation isn't new in station design. Bob knows this. Chief Executive Officer of the Western, very, very innovative cat. One Chief Jeff Johnson did something that was very innovative back in Tualatin Valley back in the day, and that was using a storefront to run a rescue out of. Being resourceful. They were limited on property, they were limited on costs, and this was the way that they were going to be able to meet the needs of the community and with under constraints. And what I like, and this is giving love out to, if I remember correctly from the article, this is an OCFA station, Orange County Fire Authority, which is Brian Fennessy, another innovative cat. And they're looking at things that are outside of the box. And this is one of them. If Bob, you probably remember this when I was at North Las Vegas and the permanent station was condemned at the time. We were operating out of a manufactured home with a metal kind of pop-up. And it was better than nothing, but certainly less than ideal. And that is not this. And I'm not criticizing North Las Vegas for that point in time, because I think that they were innovating to the best they could. They were keeping resources going. But when you look at this design and what this offers, it offers some of, or quite a few of the creature comforts of a traditional station, and some of the ergonomic design, some of the, well, you saw the workout facility that they had inside of there. They talked about the captain's quarters and things that you would find as features in a traditional design. They were incorporated into this new design. So I love where they're going, because at the end of the day, what got us here isn't going to get us there. It is so true. What does the fire service look like 10 years from now? Municipalities are not going to be able to put up $9 and $10 million fire stations. They're just not. They're not going to be able to do it. The financial resources is going to limit them from being able to make those moves. But guess what? Even if financial resources weren't an issue, then it could be a property or a real estate constraint where, hey, they got the money, but where they want to be, it's got tenants and they can't do anything about it. So I love, this is a creative solution. It's imaginative. I think it looked cool. It, to me, was very evident that they got feedback from the firefighters that would be using it. So I'm a big fan. Tip of the cap to Brian Fennessy, the fire chief at OCFA, and all the others that played a role in this. I love it.
So it's sounding like we're all a fan of this modular build. Can you guys think of why maybe a fire chief or fire department would not want to adopt this new modular build?
Well, it's different. And sometimes we struggle with anything that's different. The idea, I mean, I suppose you could build multiple modular stations that are arranged the same. Like there's this movement to standardize stations or apparatus or whatever it is, to just try to make them all the same. And I don't think that fits for the constraints that Jeff already had mentioned, because if you're building a fire station, you got a master planned community and they're going to build it out in the next 10, 20 years. And the city's able to acquire land for that and plan for 4 acres or whatever it might be that is the size of your fire station. Maybe the old design, then your cost becomes your issue, which Jeff referenced. But a lot of times we're trying to smash fire stations into areas that were already developed and now are growing, with various urban sprawl, or our friends and colleagues back east where everything's vertical, everything's infilled. You need a new location because population grew. You're just not gonna be able to fit the conventional design where you don't have room and or space to do it. So I think it depends on what some of the different constraints communities are facing. The fact that it's called modular makes it sound like it's cheap. Jeff points out, it's not. And when he was telling that story from Vegas, it was jogged the cobwebs loose of a station we had out there that was temporary in a modular or a manufactured building. It was way out in 47's area. I never had the seniority to be in 47's area, so that's why it was easily forgettable for me. I wasn't in a station like that in that particular area. But Samantha, I think that's some of the challenges. This is new. I think, as evidenced by this build in this article, I mean, we may have a solid proof of concept on the ground, and it's maybe we can expect to see this grow. When you think about fire station build and design too, the environment and weather that it's up against, I imagine in Southern California, it may or may not experience snow on the ground, and how that's designed could be a constraint. I'm no building engineer, but these are things I'm thinking about might be a challenge to give consideration to something like this. But I'm going to go with a real safe fire service answer is it's going to be culture and tradition would be a barrier for acceptance. I don't know, Jeff, other thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I got a couple other perspectives there. I agree with all those. Adding on, I wouldn't advocate for this being a sweeping change. I don't look at this as a solution to the ever-growing challenge of fiscal constraints, and let's do everything modular. I think you're right, just to kind of touch back on it, Bob. Poor attempt at naming. Modular design. Come on, people. Let's get sexy. Let's get a little bit more creative, because it does. It gives a first impression that it's got to be cheap. It's got to lack innovation, and it's got to be bare bones. When you look at the completed project or the renderings, it's hardly that. But what I would recommend for anyone that wants to explore this further is work it as an adjunct or an augmentation to your plan. I would not advocate for going completely away from fire stations. I would never do that. Right.
What do you mean? I mean, what do you mean by like traditional fire stations?
Yeah, I don't think going completely away. To me, life in general is about balance. And I think having a portion of our traditional type fire station makes sense. But when there are constraints, I think you should meet those constraints where there's a solution. And this is a solution. So in other words, if you're a fire chief, don't look at this as the end all be all solution. And now let's start programming in modular fire stations for the next 5 builds. But why not look at it systematically, intellectually, look at the data and say, okay, could we find some opportunities using this model?
And I think that speaks to the point I was trying to make, which is, one size doesn't always fit all. So this, being a tool in the toolbox, I think is important. And, I would advocate that going, on this kind of standardized design in apparatus or station doesn't meet the unique needs for the area that it's serving, because not all areas of a response district have the same needs. And I think having this flexibility is great. And I just want to punctuate the point that as I understand the modular design is it allows flexibility for future utilization or future use or that kind of stuff. I'm not entirely sure what end of life is. I don't know that I captured that in the article, and I didn't capture cost either. So those are a couple of things that I'm curious. How long is this modular structures intended to function for that community?
Bob, when you were talking about your experience with modular fire stations, you talked about how once we were done with it, we let another local in Southern Oregon fire department use it. Can you kind of talk about how easy the teardown process of that is?
certainly easy for me because somebody else managed that that entire project. But my understanding is it's not particularly challenging. But the more that you dismantle the facility and reestablish it in some other location, you start to worry about the integrity of the overall structure. It's a very low cost investment for what it was that the fire district was trying to do, which was identify a permanent location for a new fire station. And in an effort to buy time to be able to make a more informed decision, looking at the growth of the district and the community, it intended for a 3-year temporary solution. And then we were able to eventually home the permanent fire station, which left that modular available to another district that was going to be reconstructing a tear down rebuild on the same location for their fire station. So this allowed them to have a temporary location, because anybody who's dealt with that, like, that's really challenging to rehome your resources during the year or 2 years or whatever it's going to take to construct a fire station in the same place. So, from a kind of a logistical movement, it didn't appear to be, particularly challenging to me, but I couldn't give you the specifics.
And I know that we're more familiar with the structural firefighting kind of side of it, but how do you guys see these modular fire stations working for wildland firefighting? Like, maybe they have the fire station there during the fire season. Do you guys think that that's something these could be used for?
It's an interesting thought. I don't have a sense of how easy this is to mobilize and move about, but your notion that when there's a fire season, we need kind of a pop-up location for resources is quite intriguing. And it would be neat if that was available as an option. Now, wildland fires, if you've seen those base camps, it's like an entire city that mobilizes in a matter of hours, not always with luxurious sleeping arrangements. I guess that's part of the territory. What is interesting about this design that they speak to in the article is that it really constructed to withstand wildfire from a construction standpoint. So it's quite resilient that way, which I think is a nice addition to its capacity to serve the community.
Yeah, I would just add in, Samantha, I think that's a provocative point for sure. I think an additional kind of perspective that could make that interesting, could you actually execute on a plan like that, is there certainly is a level of predictability to some extent, but then there's an unpredictable nature to wildfires as well. So in other words, if you forecast to a certain area, is that the best deployment for it? I think that in addition to what is the actual stand up, stand down, how do you get that complete facility up and running? How would that play a role in it? One of the things that didn't go into depths in the article that I have to believe took place, but again, it didn't say, is fiber technology, all of the infrastructure that goes into a fire station. I can't, at least the first impression, I shouldn't get too far out of my skis here because I don't know. My guess would be is that fire station was treated exactly like a brick and mortar 50-year station as far as infrastructure. In other words, it's permanent cable and fiber and all these things that go into a fully working fire station. So it'd be interesting to know the answers to some of those questions. I definitely think it's a thought-provoking idea.
Well, this was another great innovative idea, and applause to the fire department that's taking on this new approach. Thank you, Chiefs, for joining us today, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. A link to the article we discussed can be found in the show notes. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media. If you have a question for the panel, please reach out to us at fireheadlines@wfca.com and let us know what's on your mind. We'll see you back here next week for more Fire Headlines.